Good afternoon and welcome to day 3 of Digital Inclusion Week here in Cleveland, Ohio. Today we have Drew Thomas with the Cuhyahoga County Department of Consumer Affairs Scam Squad to discuss cybersecurity and how to avoid all those scams.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here today. We have a lot of important topics to talk about in terms of scams that are out there, how they work, and how you can protect yourself, especially around using your devices and making sure you're securing and navigating the internet safely. So again, my name is Drew Thomas, and I'm with the Consumer Affairs Department for Cuhyahoga County. And we also run the Scam Squad task force, which I will talk about in depth a little bit later. But the reason we're here today is because you're working with folks, new clients, or clients that are new to broadband and thus new to certain scams that come through their new devices or by navigating the internet. So truly anyone can be scammed, any income level. Our statistics show that typically the highest age range that usually is scammed falls between 30 and 50 years old. But typically, the most vulnerable populations tend to be older residents as well as low-income residents. Those populations tend to be a lot more vulnerable to scams. Or if they do get scammed, the dollar loss is huge. So this is for a lot of reasons, whether that's lack of digital literacy or low literacy levels in general, lack of familiarity with technology. So a new user to the internet might not be aware of common red flags and things that they need to avoid to make sure that all their information is secure. So, it's your work to protect your clients that you work with, whether you're a digital navigator, a social work professional, whatever it might be. The safety and security of your clients should be one of your most important things. Whatever your work is with that client, if they end up being scammed online, more than likely it undermines the work that you're trying to do with that person. So you are here to help empower the people you work with, the residents you work with, to help them spot, avoid, and importantly report those scams. So I do want to go briefly over the top scams that we saw last year. These are scams that were reported directly to our department. So the largest section of this pie chart here are government imposter scams. Those are social security scams, government grant scams, arrest scams. So any scam where someone is an imposter of a government agency, those are the biggest government types of scams. The next section are miscellaneous scams. Typically that's a lot smaller, but in that category last year we had unemployment scams. So there were a lot of scammers out there trying to take advantage of the miscommunication and confusion around the COVID unemployment, the PUA program. They were taking advantage of the PPP loans. So there was a lot of fraud and scams around unemployment. So that really inflated that miscellaneous section. After that, typically it's our second most scam category, are imposter companies. So that would be someone claiming to be from Amazon, Walmart, the common charge pending scam that we're going to go into in more detail later falls under that imposter company. Things like utility shutoff scams also as well. After that, we have robocalls, which are those pesky, constant calls that you get. Those are, of course, illegal, but scammers use different things, different software to make thousands of calls at once, trying to get you to go along with their specific scam. So those robocalls, sometimes as well, those texts come out, and phishing emails sometimes get wrapped up in those robocalls. Under that, 4% are imposter person scams. So these are like your grandparent scam. A scammer pretends to be a family member, or more insidiously, we'll get detail of it later, but romance scams. So even though it is only a small section of the scams that are happening in our county, this is really important for us to look at because a lot of dollar loss is found in these imposter person scams, especially with those romance scams. A lot of those folks that get tangled in romance scams tend to lose all of their money to those scams over the course of 1 to 2 years. From there, we've got things like housing property scams. Those can be rental scams. So if you're not using credible sites, perhaps you're using Craigslist to find a new home. Oftentimes those are riddled with fake ads. So you might think you are paying rent to a legitimate landlord, but really the scammer is using that ad, collecting the money, but it's actually not going to the actual landlord. Also, there are online sales, so you might have gone to an imposter website to buy a certain product. What happens is you put your info in, you never get that product, but now your credit card info or your bank account info is compromised. So that's a small percentage, but something to definitely look out when it comes up to the holiday buying season. Those scams tend to increase. And then the final little sliver there are job scams, so fake job scams. Oftentimes, if you're not familiar about how to apply for different jobs out there, maybe again you're using Craigslist, you might find yourself being fake employed where you give up your information and you're compromised, or you actually do have a job, but you're a middleman for the scammer. Those are what we're seeing as like reshipping scams, where you're running around and actually working for the scammer, but not really getting paid, but doing their dirty work. So what do scammers really want? Well, first and foremost, they want your money. So they're coming after your hard-earned earnings, retirement savings, whatever it might be, and they're going to direct you to pay them in unfamiliar ways that are hard to trace by authorities and are hard to reverse as well. So the common ones are gift cards. Scammers will try to convince you to pay using gift cards. They'll ask you to go buy some and then ask you to read those numbers off, in which they can launder those numbers and quickly move the funds from the card to a specific thing that they can use to pay something else. So a lot of people are getting smart to those gift cards. That tends to put off a red flag. So now scammers are often using Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency. So now they're saying, hey, go to that cryptocurrency ATM that just got installed down the street at that local little mini mart. Go in there, make with deposits of some money, and then send that Bitcoin to my account. That is what they are more changing their scams up to. So again, unfamiliar payments, gift cards, money wires, Bitcoin. Sometimes they're using the old, put some money in the envelope and mail it to me, but that's usually, that's more rare these days. If they can't get your money, they're after your personal information. They can use, if they get your social security number, your bank account information, your credit card number, they can use that in a lot of ways to either mess up your security, your life, take out credit cards or loans in your name, or even sell that information to other scammers who would further compromise your security. If they can't get that personal information, they're going to try to convince you to get them computer access or device access. So again, maybe they aren't able to get the money from you directly, that personal information from you directly. They will try to manipulate you to download certain applications that allow remote access, or it holds malware, which will freeze up your device, essentially hold it hostage. So forcing you in a way to give up either that money or personal information. So, these scammers, it's a full-time job to be a scammer. It's really, they're professionals. They work 40 hours, more than 40 hours a week to try and target people that will give out money through their scams. So, as we mentioned before, they're imposters. So they're posing as either government officials, company officials from your utility company or from Amazon. They're posing as a loved one or as your grandparent or a friend. They're trying to pose as someone that is credible or someone that you're supposed to be able to trust. So once they have that credibility piece there, they're trying to make you feel panicked. They're trying to invoke that flight and fight response in you so that you don't critically think super well. They're panicking you. Oftentimes they will also try to keep you isolated. So whether it's a robocall and you're following along with the scam, oftentimes they'll say, don't tell anyone, or keep this between you and I. So they're making you feel panicked, they're making you feel isolated, so you don't talk to anyone who can help you. And they're good at what they're doing. They're actors. So they're charming, they're, again, appearing credible, they're professional. They are following often a script, trying to do their best to remove your money from your wallet. Oftentimes these scams are designed where they come up with a huge problem. You weren't aware of this problem, but now you are. They've got you in, and they're your buddy. They're going to help you solve this problem, and now you're helping each other get through this problem. So that's often why these scams work. We try to destigmatize that whole, oh, that person was so stupid for falling for that scam. We hear that a lot. And again, unfortunately, these scammers operate in a specific moment of time where a person might be feeling vulnerable and they're more susceptible to going along with these types of scams. So let's get into some of these common scams out there. The payment pending scam, super popular. In this example, the scammer is posing as an Amazon official or representative. And they're saying either through a phone call or maybe through a phishing email that there is a problem with a payment pending against your account. So if you're someone, I often get these emails or texts. I don't have Amazon, so I know it's a scam. But if you're someone that's using Amazon all of the time, you're constantly ordering things, maybe this is something that you would be like, oh shoot, there's a problem, I need to solve it. So, of course, in reality, the consumer never made a purchase. The scammer is just hoping that that consumer uses that Amazon account often, and then the person then engages with that scammer and actually talks to them. The scammer is trying to, make the person relax, like, oh, you have this huge problem, but don't worry, we can fix it. Just download this app, and we will get through this mistake. Once that app is downloaded, the scammer gets access to people's device. It's a remote access app that people are often instructed to download. From there, they manipulate the screen. They often go into people's bank accounts and manipulate numbers to make it appear that there is a huge refund given that was a mistake by the scammer or by the Amazon representative that the consumer thinks they're talking to. Now, the scammer is going through this script saying, oh no, I refunded you way too much money. I am so very sorry. I was only supposed to refund you $100. I refunded you $10,000. I'm going to lose my job. My kids are going to suffer. My family's going to suffer. Please, I need you to help me refund that $10,000. You were only supposed to get that $100 back. And then oftentimes, either the scammer will say, go ahead and authorize that transaction through your bank account, or they will ask them to pay in unfamiliar ways, again, with gift cards or cryptocurrency. So, very popular scam. Again, these company imposter scams are credible. This person scammer is using a well-known company. Oftentimes, Amazon is one of the most popular, but PayPal, Walmart, those are other well-used companies by scammers. They're making that victim feel that panic again. The victim didn't know they overpaid or had a payment issue, so they want to protect their money. So, is it an error that they made? Was it an error on their end? They believe the scammer is credible. Maybe it was another actor operating. So they're confused. They want to save their money. So that's why they're panicked. And in this scam, that scammer is their friend. You know, the scammer is offering to help them, but during all of this manipulation, they're just drawing that person deeper into the scam to get to that final payout. Really, this gaining the computer access piece, it's a newer thing that scammers tend to do, but once a consumer downloads those apps, it's very confusing because those scammers can use them to manipulate those screens, as mentioned before. And again, that scammers trying to make the consumer feel like the hero. You're helping me out. I made this huge mistake. You're going to help reverse that fund, and then I get to, keep my job. But it's all a game, all a story, in order to get that money, which is the real goal of the scam. So those payment pending scams, super, super popular. Often they start with, again, those texts, phishing emails, or a robocall that you get. These tech support and repair scams, they kind of work with those payment pending scams. These are also initiated through a phone call or through fake pop-up warnings that you might get browsing on unsecured websites. So oftentimes it'll say, hey, there's an issue, or oh, I am a representative from Microsoft or Apple. There's a problem that's going on with your computer. Actual companies, it's never their process to call, email, or text you that there is a problem. Oftentimes there's antivirus software that will say, oh, you have a virus on your computer. You will have to go in physically to get that type of help. So oftentimes those scammers are saying, warning, they're trying to panic you. Call this number now. And when you call that number, it leads you to the scammer and not actual Microsoft or Apple tech support. So anytime someone is telling you to download a remote access app, that is 100% all the time a scam. These tech companies will never, ever ask someone to do that. But someone who's new to broadband, new to the internet, they might not know that yet, which is really important that you working with those clients know. Also, people will say, oh, I need to Google Apple tech support, or I need to Google Microsoft tech support. Google is a great tool, but unfortunately, scammers know how often it is used, so they will try and create fake sites with URLs just slightly off, or with like one number that's slightly off, like an official tech support line for these companies. They're assuming that you're going quickly through a Google search and that you click onto their website, which looks almost credible, but oftentimes there's little details that are off. Google, again, that creates these self-induced scams. So you're actually initiating into the scams yourself, which is about 10% of our scams start off that way. So we never advise people to just Google. Try your best to go through credible websites to find the tech support sites, or usually if you get a device, you'll get instructions of what the actual URL is for tech support. That's what we always encourage people to go through. Actually, I was out a week ago playing Scam, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and I did actually talk to a resident who said that they got scammed by Googling Apple Help. So those are out there. Of course, Apple and Microsoft, if they are aware that there is a scam site, they try to get that removed, and often it is removed quickly. But scammers are working just as fast, and we try to get another imposter site in that place for those Google results. So tech support repair scams are super popular, especially when it comes to the cyber and digital scams. Arrest and jury duty hybrid scams are very hot right now in our county. They aren't always initiated typically through internet or through your computer, but more than likely it's coming in the form of a robocall. So specifically in our county, we have had, back in the spring, there were scammers that were targeting teachers within their first 3 years. They were targeting Strongsville and Cleveland schools. from there, they were going through the secretary and then directing the secretary to transfer their call to the teacher's cell phone. Because this call was coming from the secretary, that only increased the credibility of the scammer. The scammer then would get to the teacher and say they are a representative of the court or a sheriff, a county sheriff, and that that teacher missed jury summons, and now there is an arrest warrant or a huge fine that they have to immediately pay, or else they could lose their teaching license. So again, some of these first-year teachers, they're panicked. You know, something legal that could really jeopardize their career, getting into some legal troubles. So they were then instructed by the scammer to stay on the phone with them and drive to the Justice Center. From there, on the way to the Justice Center, they're on the phone, and the scammer's like, okay, well, we can make this all go away if you can just stop at the nearest Rite Aid, Walgreens, CVS. You know, they're following the person along, they have a map, and then they instruct the teacher to get a gift card and then to read off the numbers. So unfortunately, one teacher did actually comply with all the scammer's commands. They were super panicked. Again, they didn't want to jeopardize their career. And then they made that one payment, and then they realized, oh no, I'm caught in some sort of scam. They ended up going to the Justice Center, and that's when they were met by sheriffs there that said that they confirmed to that teacher that they were a part of the scam. So if you're not familiar with certain things, you know, law enforcement will never call ahead of time to say that there's a warrant out for your arrest or that you are in deep trouble. Any type of court summons come through the mail, but if you're not familiar with the system, or if you're in this state of panic, it's hard for you to really critically think all that out. Scammers are using Justice Center. They're looking up people's actual deputy names and badge numbers. So they come up with these narratives that really seem credible. In fact, years ago, scammers were just saying, you know, go to the local courthouse. And then someone told them, oh, we call it the Justice Center. So when scammers target residents here, they know the right words to say to, again, make their narratives and stories more credible. And again, those elaborate stories of why you are a suspect are there designed to make you feel that panic. So super hot arrest and jury duty scams typically are initiated through that phone call. Romance scams. As I mentioned before, it's a small percentage of reports that we get about romance scams, but these are typically just some of the worst scams out there, and these are initiated online. Whether it's initiated through dating sites, they're also being initiated through like Facebook groups where you all like certain things of the same thing. We've heard of a victim being scammed through a motorcycle Facebook group that they were a part of, and they met someone there that had similar likes, but it ended up being a scam. So, you know, places like your social media, even LinkedIn are spots where this scam can be initiated. And these switch up the whole thing. So they're not making you feel panicked or afraid, they're making you feel loved and wanted. So they're really trying to start a romantic relationship with you. Now, you know, these people never meet. Scammers are always imposters. They claim to be someone that you are familiar with or someone that you think you know, but they're actors, usually not even in the country. So these are long-term scams. Most scams usually last no more than 30 minutes. And then they move on, and either they get the payout or they realize they can't scam the victim. But these, they take some time. The first payments of some of these romance scams might not even come into 6 months after the initial contact of the scammer and the victim. So we also aren't told of these until usually all of the victim's money is gone. And typically we hear from a person's family member or a friend coming on behalf of that victim saying that there's a huge problem. The worst is when we hear from their spouse, because then there's other trauma involved regarding possible cheating. So these are really tough. Again, these are constant, frequent contact. So using a messenger app, even WhatsApp sometimes, or other texting, they're constantly engaging with someone, saying that they love them, they need to send a little bit more money. So it's always frequent, but never will they meet in person. But again, to that victim, they seem like that real love, like a real person that they are making legitimate connections with. So if you're working with a client and these are some of the things that you want to be aware of if they start talking and disclosing this with you. You know, perhaps that person is saying that they have a new friend or a romantic partner that they've met online. You know, again, those Facebook interest groups. Again, despite whatever talk that they might have of marrying that person or being with that person forever, they will never meet. We did have someone in the county talk about withdrawing, I believe it was $50,000 from their bank so that they could deposit to someone in California for a house that they were going to buy together. So they were caught up with this scammer, online scammer, romance scam, that was telling them that we are going to start a new life together. So you need to send this money to us so we can save for our dream house. Of course, when they send that money, it's gone. Nothing's going down towards a deposit to that dream house. Eventually, the victims at first might be okay, but then bills will be struggled to be met to be paid. Utilities are not made. Bank accounts start to plummet. Those are very red flags if you notice those at all, or notice a family member reporting those things to you, perhaps. Oftentimes, these romance scams are turning into investment scams. So whether it's you got someone that you're fully in love with, or even like, hey buddy, we've been talking for a while, we're friends, I've made so much money, this is a way that you can make a lot of money. These investment hybrid romance scams are very new, and they also often use that cryptocurrency. So a lot of the time the scammers are saying, I made so much money using Bitcoin, you can too, let me show you how, download this app. As you know with the other remote access apps, you kind of know what the story is there. They're going to manipulate what that victim sees. And again, that victim is constantly getting frequent texts or in-app messages. So if you're working with a client and they're constantly getting distracted by messages on their phone, that could be a red flag that that person's involved in a deeper romance scam. And again, if you tend to see that someone's isolating themselves far more than usual, oftentimes those scammers will be directing the victim to not tell anyone. Again, this is our secret. Don't tell your loved ones that you're paying out all this money to me. You know, this is our life, this is our romance that we're planning for. So really scary. We have different resources through Scam Squad that people that do get involved in these romance scams can get in touch with. We work with the Benjamin Institute of Aging, and they have a support group for folks that do find themselves involved in these romance scams. Because usually when they're done, not only is people's money gone, but usually their relationships with their family members or even spouse are afraid, or they have deep trauma when it comes to finding out that they loved someone that was an imposter and a scammer that was manipulating them. So again, our friends Benjamin and Rose Institute, they have a little trauma support group for folks that go through romance scams. And lastly, robocalls. Those dang pesky robocalls. Again, most of these scams will start out with a call. Oftentimes it'll then direct you to use your device to go on the internet, download these apps, whatever it might be. Our common advice is if you get an unfamiliar call, you gotta just let it go to voicemail. So if you're working with a client that maybe they just got a brand new phone, make sure that they have a voicemail set up and go through these basic steps. If someone picks it up and you don't know who it is at all, just hang it up. Because oftentimes you might be initiating into that scam. Never call back those unknown numbers. What's happening now is the carriers, AT&T, Verizon, they are now allowed to say scam likely. So oftentimes if you have a smartphone, you're gonna get something that says scam is likely or unknown. When that comes up, don't answer. Oftentimes scammers are using something called spoofing. It's a software that masks their number as like a 216-440-330 number, something that looks regional or local to try and trick you as well. And that's why if you're not exactly certain of who is calling you, let it go to voicemail. Because if it's legitimate, they will leave you a detailed voicemail message. Never, ever provide sensitive information, that private information of social security number, bank account numbers, credit card numbers, over the phone to anyone who calls you unexpectedly. Again, law enforcement, utility companies, tech support companies, they're never going to be calling you to ask you to do something or to make some sort of payment. And then you got to use your phone settings to filter the calls and messages from unknown folks. So if you're working with someone that's not familiar, how to set those settings up, I'll give you some resources to help you out with that. And everyone should know how to go in and physically block a number. And that's what we advise. If you're not familiar with that number, go in and block it. So that brings us to our internet safety page. So we designed this, actually debuted it in about a few months ago in August, but we're trying to go along with that initiative and push to try and get folks that previously didn't have access to broadband or devices, this information. So they're getting these devices, you're working with them, but they may not know how to properly protect themselves or know these common online scams. So we put this together of different credible partners. A lot of these go straight to the FTC, FCC, other partners that we deem credible. Down there we also have the Digital Navigator page. We have a larger GCF Global Learning page where you can learn anything from how to turn on a computer to use a mouse to more advanced topics. But typically it's about protecting your device and recognizing and how to avoid those common online scams. So we've already talked a little bit about those romance scams, tech support scams, but some of these resources here. We've got the FCC Smartphone Security Checker that we found to be very informative and credible. You can select which device your client might be working with, or of course yourself if you want to know how to secure your smartphone. It's got Android, Apple, even BlackBerry, even though they've suspended those services for BlackBerry, Windows Phone, and you can go through this to get a very detailed walkthrough of how to secure your device. Other than that, we link towards the Federal Trade Commission, FTC's online privacy and security page, which has a lot of different things. From again, making sure that your phone is secure, that you understand what malware is and how to avoid it, the dangers around using public Wi-Fi networks, coming up with password checklists, any topic for a new user we thought could go here and find what they needed, or someone working with someone that's new to broadband. So again, that's a very credible partner. The FTC is also a member of Scam Squad, which I'll go on in more depth a little bit later. We also link to the Consumer Reports Security Planner, which is a lot more interactive and really gets into detail of any little device that you might have questions about how to secure. So again, we've got the smartphone, we've got your common different computers out there, and even things like video game consoles, baby monitors, any device that could potentially be compromised by a scammer. There are details of how you can secure that device. So again, those other resources are there to go in depth of those common scams that are out there that I did previously with you. So that brings us to Scam Squad. So my department the Consumer Affairs Department, we help run this multidisciplinary task force. So typically it's been aimed at older adults to empower them, to make certain that they know about the different scams that are out there. And it's really bringing together all the different groups and agencies and nonprofits that are out there doing this work, trying to protect residents in our county. So people like, again, the Federal Trade Commission is a part of it. The FBI, in fact, we worked with the FBI to come up with Bitcoin warnings that we try to place by every Bitcoin ATM machine that we can find. We've got local law enforcement, Department of Senior and Adult Services, the Better Business Bureau, things again like the Benjamin Rose Institute of Aging. Again, anyone that has a stake in typically older residents, but any resident that can be scammed in our county. Typically, if you are not in the county, if you get a robocall or a scam, we want you to report that to the FTC. But our whole thing with Scam Squad is we want you to call us if you have any questions, and we are the one-stop shop for Cuyahoga County residents to make these scam reports or to even ask for advice of how to deal with certain scams. So if you're working with someone and they get an unfamiliar text, an unfamiliar email, you're not exactly sure about it, call us. We have 2 investigators ready to pick up the phone to talk with people and guide them through things before they even become scammed, or give them access to resources in case they do become scammed. And more importantly, when we get these reports, we try to use that information to justify more funding towards things like the FTC that can try to really crack down on these scammers. Another group that's part of us are the Ohio Attorney General, which is actually doing a large lawsuit against robocalls that can hopefully try to diminish how many robocalls are coming out at folks all the time. So we do have a website, our Cuyahoga County.us Scam Squad page, and from there, again, you can find more information of how to avoid these common scams, what to do if you are scammed, and how to report those scams. So right now we've got, again, those hot scams or those arrest and jury duty scams. Again, they were targeting the teachers in the spring, but we are getting constant reports weekly of different versions of those types of scams. I actually picked up the phone on Monday and I was talking to a resident that was, they had just got off the phone with a scammer saying they failed to register for the sexual offender list and that they were going to be immediately imprisoned unless they paid a fine. Now, of course, this gentleman is a former criminal on the sex offender list, but he's scared. He's a vulnerable population that scammers try to go after. So he, in his panic, he hung up on the phone call and he called the sex offender registry, and they told him, hey man, you're fine, you're good, this is a scam call. So then he called us and we walked him through it and again reassured him that as long as he didn't give out that information, private information, social security number, bank account information, he's fine, he's gonna be okay. So we're there for any resident, regardless of their background. We're trying to protect them from losing money to these scammers. Also through there, we've got those recovery resources. So if you lose money, or if you make a payment, you can actually try to stop that payment in the moment, as long as you know that it is fraudulent. I do have some tip sheets over there. These tip sheets can be found on our website, but I did bring some physical copies as well. So again, this is the place to go to find these different resources, and then especially if you come across a scam, whether someone falls for it or not, we want that to be reported to us so that we can relay that to our partners with the FTC to track the scam activity in our county. Other resources that our Scam Squad task force has come up with over the years are these hang up if cards. So these are trying to be bright yellow, easy to spot, easy to find. with just common red flags that if this is happening, you bet it yourself that it's going to be a scam. 100% it's a scam. So if someone's calling to threaten to arrest you, lock you up, freeze up your accounts, that's a scam. If they're asking for personal information or computer access, it's a scam. Or if they're demanding that you're paying now using different unfamiliar ways of payments, it's 100% a scam. And then on the back, we have, again, some of our different partners through Scam Squad, the Consumer Affairs Department, we run it. But again, we also reach out and partner closely with the Senior Adult Services, Federal Trade Commission, Ohio Attorney General, Better Business Bureau, and the actual city of Cleveland have their own Consumer Affairs Department, but it's a little bit in restructure mode. So we do work together, but we want you to report these scams to our department. Also, what I like to go, my favorite thing to do is play Scammo with folks. So this is a bingo style game, just like bingo, but Scammo. So it's a little bit more fun, interactive way to learn about all of the different types of scams that are out there, whether they're coming through your phone, coming through your computer or smartphone, or sometimes these scams are still coming through the mail. We go through this and talk about the different scam terms, organizations and agencies that are there to protect residents, and what people need to do in order to report these scams. So again, these are free. I go out and I play with different groups. It's a lot of fun. There's prizes to be won, and it's played just like bingo. So if you're interested in setting that up, you can of course reach out to our department there. That's our contact info. We'd love to come out and play Scammo, as long as you have about 20 or more participants. And again, we want you to reach out to us even before you become scammed. So if you're not quite certain, if you're working with someone and they're getting unfamiliar text again, reach out to us and just ask questions, ask for advice. Our investigators, we try to make it our policy in our department that we don't give you the runaround. And if we don't know the answer, we're going to get you directly to the agency or referral that knows that answer. So we're always there to pick up our phones. If we're not, we're very receptive to those voicemails. We're trying to get back in touch with you so that you or the clients that you work with don't get scammed. So give us a call. Other than just scams, we do have those investigators that take in business complaints. So if there's a complaint against a business in Cuhyahoga County, maybe a business rips you off, those investigators can also advocate on your behalf to try and resolve the solution and try to make you whole. So again, we're ready to assist and empower residents in any which way. And in general, for all other things, our direct line for consumer affairs can be used to request different materials, again, different tip sheets, the hang up if cards that I showed a little bit earlier, to arrange a speaker or even play Scammo. Give us a call, an inquiry, and that's how you can get a hold of us. So I'd love to open this part to any questions or concerns or jokes that anyone might have regarding any of the material I went over.
Thank you so much, Drew. I have a question. I know you guys sort of have intake for reports of scams that are going on, but you also work with the FBI. So what does that sort of compilation process look like of what are all the scams right now?
Yeah. So yeah, we work with a lot of different community partners, and whether that's going out to table at their certain events to make certain that people get info about different scams. The FBI has actually been tasked to do something with their Elder Justice Task Force. It's a newer thing that the FBI has been directed to do. And one of the things that they worked with us with Scam Squad was to come up with these Bitcoin information signs. So this is a smaller little pamphlet about what to be aware of about Bitcoin, reminding people that legitimate government agencies will never ask you to pay in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. And we've worked with the FBI to actually get some of these onto these Bitcoin ATM machines that have been popping up in a lot of these local mini marts, corner stores, what have you. They are supposed to have these small little warnings when you use these ATM machines that say, be careful, never send money to someone you don't know. But we try to make it much larger, right on the side of these ATM machines, that you could be potentially using this and going along with a scam. So that's specifically, we work with the FBI. They've got a larger budget than our department does, so they helped make these nice little pamphlets that come with little Scam Squad logo there. But of course the FBI seal's right at the top. So to demonstrate that, a lot of people just don't know, because Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is very new, that's just not something that typically people are directed to make any sort of payment through. We had a doctor that was somewhere in her 40s or 50s that got wrapped up in a cryptocurrency Bitcoin scam attempt, where she was told that she had to make a payment immediately, had to go to a Bitcoin ATM machine, and actually when she was there, she saw one of our warnings and then realized and followed those red flags and found out that she was being scammed. So this is a doctor, a surgeon with a PhD. It just goes to show you that anyone can be scammed if they're just not familiar with what they're being asked to do. So specifically, that's what we partnered up with the FBI with in order to get that information out.
Is that the only project so far?
With the FBI specifically, we've also done things, again, those yellow hang-up ifs were a project with a lot of collaboration with the Department of Senior and Adult Services. They were the ones that gave us the input of like, let's make it a certain color that's going to be stand out from if someone has a bunch of clutter around their phone. We've also tried to work with, I mentioned the Benjamin Rose Aging Institute. We worked on a project to, again, get that support group for people that have experienced romance scams together. So our last big project was getting that internet safety page up that I showed before, where we had different partners chime in on what sites should be included as credible sites. Good question. Any other questions?
What are common methods scammers use to try and extract money out of people?
Yeah. So I touched on it briefly in the presentation, but again, they are using, the big ones are panic. They come off as credible by being an imposter. So they're trying to be credible, and then they're making you feel panic so that you don't critically think about why they're actually telling you to do certain things. And then they're telling you to do things fast. You need to do this right now. And then they will say, don't tell anyone. Keep this between us. This is our secret. So they're using isolation. So panic, isolation are the big tactics that these scammers are using, again, as credible imposters. So all of that put together is really the perfect recipe to catch someone who might be, maybe they have a bad day. Maybe they're going through some sort of grief. It just takes one person to have a bad day to be initiated by the scammer, to go along with the scammer, and to be appearing credible. Does that answer your question?
That's a really good point. I work a lot with, end users and people who are victims or potential victims of scams. And in my little town specifically, I live in Oakwood Village. There was like an outbreak of Microsoft/Google phone calls rolling in and having them, exactly like you said, download a remote support app. And I had a couple of people, like you said, just freeze up. Like, oh God, I have a virus. What do I do? Oh God, I got overcharged. What do I do? And it just really creates that sense of, I need to trust this person who's telling me that I'm in trouble.
Yep. And a lot of times when they target older populations, there is a bit of a culture difference of a lot of older folks tend to be super trusty. So they will go along with someone that is a stranger, just assuming that this is something that is legitimate, because they came up in a different era where they could really trust any neighbor or anyone around them. But this access to technology really opens people up to being victimized by those imposters, by those scammers. And that's, I think, that really takes people like you, the digital navigators, people that are working directly with these clients, these residents, that puts a lot of more importance on what you're doing with them. And if those residents are coming up with certain things like, hey, I was told to get a gift card, that's where you can act in to try and advocate and help them out and let them know that they're getting caught up in a scam. The grandparent scam, I didn't detail that out, but about a month ago, I got a call from a gentleman, and he's like, I didn't know what it was, but I swear it was my grandson. I heard my grandson's voice. So those are typically, the scammer will pretend to be the grandson, or the voice will be modified just a little bit, and the scammer says, well, I got into a car accident, I'm in jail, I need you to send me money, and it can seem super credible. So the gentleman that called in, he's like, wow, I was really believing it, but I had my wife here, and she actually called my grandson who's up in Canada on vacation to find out that it was a scam. But if folks are isolated, if they don't have a family member right next to them to help them, shake them out of that scam, it's very likely that they're going to go along with that scam out of panic or out of love for that loved one that they think is in trouble. Yeah, they're really scary. Any other questions?
People ask me this all the time. What do you say to somebody who's afraid to use the internet or a device because scams are out there?
Yeah. I just try to empower them with, you have to always be constantly learning. The internet can be very scary. You can fall into things that jeopardize your security, but you need to empower yourself by learning how to do it. Because when you have access to, the internet, to broadband, your opportunities increase, whether those might be job opportunities, social opportunities, but it really also comes with that education piece. I've met people that have said straight up, I've been scammed before, I'm so afraid to use my new computer, I'm not even going to use it. I sold it. And that is, it's hard, it is. Because you can't deny that the fact that these threats aren't out there. They are out there, they're kind of constant. But again, just saying, it is. You can't teach an old dog new tricks per se. So if someone is maybe an older resident, they say, well, I can't do this and I can't learn. You can just try to encourage them that there are a lot of other benefits. The benefits outweigh the negatives when it comes to navigating and using the internet. You just got to use it safely. Yeah, it can be hard to motivate people if they are already hurt by something. Any other questions?
What would you personally say is a good way to waste these scammers' time so they're not busy scamming other people?
So to waste certain scammers' time?
No, so you get one on the phone and you get one have them going on, reading the lines, and you just want to waste his time for a good couple hours. What would be the funniest way to do that in your opinion?
So unfortunately, I like where your head is at, but what's going on is if a scammer's got you, they're also running a program that's scamming other people at once.
Yeah.
So you're not really wasting their time. And every scammer has a different operation. There are the mom and pop scammers that got enough money to get their software together, that live in their parents' garages, basements, attics. Then there's these call centers, actual call centers where people either they know they're going to work as a scammer or they're tricked into thinking that they're legitimately going to work. And with those, they have enough sophisticated software to be constantly making different calls to other people. So they got someone on the line and they're working you there, but then there's other scammers or themselves are working a different scam on the other hand. So typically, if you are on a robocall with someone, with a scammer, You pick up that phone and you're just talking to them like, hey, I know you're a scammer. They will just hang up the phone. Or you can say going along with the scam, but you know it's a scam, but you're just going along with it to see what they say. You're never really always wasting their time. But if you really cheese off a scammer, what we've seen happen is they will use, I've mentioned spoofing before, so that's a software where they mask their number as a familiar number. So we've actually had a local guy, again, we tell people, if you get into a scam and you know it's a scam, hang it up and end it. But we have a local guy that would constantly say, well, I'm annoying you, I'm pestering you, and then the scammer started using his number as the number to be spoofed. So his number was being used to scam other people. People were calling that number back, getting him, and then yelling at him thinking he was the scammer, but the scammers were being vindictive using his number. So likely that would happen. And then oftentimes if a scammer doesn't get money or personal information from you, but you pick up the phone and talk, they'll be like, oh, this is someone that will answer these phone calls and go along with them. This is information that I can sell to another scammer that can maybe target this person on a different day and catch them off guard. So the more you interact with these robocalls and these scams, the more power and information you actually give to the scammer, even if you might think you're annoying them or scaring them.
Well, say you reverse engineer their remote access software and you manage to get to their system and, wipe the entire thing. I feel like that would probably irritate a bunch of people.
That definitely would. You would have to be very skilled and sophisticated with that. Maybe you are. There are some cool YouTube videos out there. I forget the gentleman's name, but there are a couple like the white hat hackers that will reverse hack into a lot of these scammer operations and get into their computers, videos. They'll help tip off law enforcement, or they will really mess with the scammer because they've infiltrated their scam. It is possible to do that. I would advise a regular resident to do it. I would advise anyone to do it on their own, but it is something that has been done and can be done if you've got those skills.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation for the best robo-killer?
There is call blocking technology out there. Typically, again, these phone carriers like Verizon, AT&T, they've made things easier to be identified as scam calls. So it's been more just given into like the smartphones. But if you have like a landline phone, and if you're working with any older resident in your line of work, typically they still have landline phones, and call blocking technology would be definitely important for that. I don't have any brands off the top of my head, and we're actually not allowed to actually endorse any brands as a government agency. But I would encourage you to, use things like the Better Business Bureau or other types of consumer report websites to find the best call blocking software that you can purchase.
Thanks.
Yeah, definitely important if folks still have those landlines. And if people don't have caller ID for the landlines, they should get that.
So there are call blocking services for landlines.
Yeah, there's specific software out there. But yeah, with your smartphone device, a lot of that is built in already, and there are ways that you can set your phone up as to like automatically just ignore those scam likely calls as well. And I encourage you, if you're working with someone, to look that up and become familiar with it. Good questions. Anyone else? Yes.
Are you seeing an influx of, how you have to pay in antivirus programs? And some of them carry the malware that they can do the phishing schemes and different things like that, put the backdoors into the machine. How common is that, that you're seeing?
So, wait, what of what people
So say,
already getting
let's say,
devices
for
and they
example,
already compromised?
APG, is there any vulnerabilities that you're seeing within some of these antivirus softwares, quote unquote?
Not necessarily the softwares themselves,
Okay.
but then sometimes scammers will say, hey, your Norton antivirus has expired. You need to re-up right now. Norton doesn't call you. So typically those scammers, sometimes they'll just charge you for things that are typically free, and you're just not savvy and aware of that, sometimes they will then direct you to download those malicious applications that then open up your device to be more compromised.
That's my biggest.
So typically, yeah, if you buy something that's legit, it's not already compromised. But sometimes scammers come in and pretend to say, hey, you need to authorize this, and then they have you download a remote access app, and then they go in and get the malware on there.
Gotcha. Well, that's not something you're seeing in conjunction with the FBI. It's something that's frequent. That's something that's more.
Yeah, it comes later, but not like when you buy the the antivirus security. Not when it's first installed. We haven't seen that.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, good question. Well, thanks for letting me come and present and talk to you a little bit about the scams that are out there and the dangers that they bring to new broadband users. You've got my contact information. Over here, I've got more handouts, so those tip sheets, things like I went over the arrest and jury duty scams, romance scams. There's things also as well of utility shut-off scams over there. So if any of that's pertinent to you, go ahead and grab a stack. You can also find those on our tip sheets section on our website as well.